2. And we have Space Coast crew in lane 0, Greenwich crew in lane 1, Morristown rowing in lane 2, Sarasota in lane 3, oars, that's Orlando Area Rowing Society in lane 4, Mount St. Joseph's in lane 5, NorCal in lane 6, and White Rock Rowing in lane 7. Once again, it'll be interesting to see how the referees try to start the race this time, given what they learned in the previous race. Right now, we can see lane 6 having a little bit of difficulty getting into those blocks, but it looks like they might be on now, and they continue to sort of scull over.
Yeah, and you know, these are not necessarily the easiest conditions. Again, this is nothing life-threatening. It's nothing too terrible that, you know, that you have to write home about. But we are getting a little bit more of a cross breeze now. It's about 92 degrees. And you start to see a little bit of glare on the water. So one thing to think about that maybe athletes don't think about that have a coxswain, our coxswains actually have to look up and down quite often, and sometimes these little buoys actually get lost in not only the glare, but in the chop. So you have a little bit of glare, a little bit of chop, and it's actually easy to lose sight of the lane, and that could potentially be why we see a little bit of steering correction every once in a while. So that is something to think about, especially with some of the younger coxswains.
Yeah, I have a newfound respect for coxswains now. I never considered that as an athlete. So one more way for me to be empathetic with the coxswains now.
Hey, I'll take it. Absolutely, and we'll see that in some of the bow loader boats too. It's even more difficult. But in these 8s, it is very, very common for a coxswain to look down at a cox box and then look up again and actually lose sight of where they are in the center of that lane. And sometimes, we see it at races like Crew Classic sometimes, or some of the bigger events where they'll actually start to go diagonally for a moment because all of the buoys actually line up diagonally just as they are straight. So it can be a little tricky, but life experience and time in the boat can definitely help that. But these conditions just can be deceivingly tricky.
Yeah, it's amazing. I go from, having gone from rowing in high school to rowing at the senior national team level. It's amazing to think about how in these conditions our coxswains at the top level knew. They just came into the dock and were able to get their boats pointed.
Right,
so
exactly.
Here we go.
Here
Looks
we
like
go.
They're taking the pole. Ooh. I was wondering, it looked like 6 might have moved a little bit, but it looks like it's a clean start. So off to this start, this is a great angle to see here. I love to see when we have all of the boats going out. It looks like White Rock is actually here taking a little bit of, going out a little fast, as well as Space Coast. I love that name, Space Coast.
I love it.
It's just really, feel like a space cowboy.
I know. I was actually texting their coach, and I was like, I've got to get some merch from this team. It's a phenomenal team name there. And as we sing the praises of their merch and their name, we will sing the praises of their placing here, because it looks to me like they are in first. Again, followed by all the way on the outside, White Rock. Again, I love when those sneaky outside can start to challenge each other, because you have to keep your head on a swivel here as a coxswain, keeping an eye on those outside lanes, because that's how you get caught.
Right, and it's really tough when you have 8 lanes across to keep track of where everyone is. It looks like the race is shaping up. It looks like White Rock has started to fade a bit, and we now have Space Coast and Greenwich A that are in the lead. But it is really tight in there for 3rd place. It looks like we have maybe Morristown as well as Oars and Sarasota in that race for that 3rd spot right now, 3rd and 4th spot.
That's right, and I'm going to keep my eye on Greenwich crew here, making that little steering correction again, trying to get off the buoys and back in the center of that lane, who got 4th in this event last year, led by Sydney Perez here. So lane 1 looks like that coxswain again, trying to find the center of that lane. It did cost them a little bit, though. Lane 2, Morristown Row. Club. Looks like they did take advantage just a little bit.
You know, I'm wondering if they're having any steering issues. They've been going back and forth a little bit in that lane, so there could be something with that rudder. Not sure, but anyway, we'll see if the coxswain has been able to correct whatever that is and sort of get the crew going straight. It looks like they have the speed. They were well in that second place spot, and we'll see how that impacts the race.
Exactly. And, you know, something to mention, too, is that when you are steering a 62 to 63-foot boat with a rudder the size of a credit card, it takes about 3 seconds for a boat to respond when you make a move like that. So when you see that you're off to the side and you make a large correction, it can take 2 to 3 strokes, 2 to 3 seconds for that boat to actually respond. And by then, you've responded too much. You've overcorrected. So that's maybe why, if there's nothing broken, could potentially be why she is actually going back and forth, because she's trying to find middle ground again with that tiny little credit card of a rudder.
Yeah, and all of that, again, going back to the conditions. It looks like they're back on. Going back to the conditions at the start where they maybe had to be pointed a little bit off because they were getting blown by the wind.
Yeah, that's right. And it looks like we still have that Space Coast crew leaving the stratosphere here. See how many puns I can make about space. But still in the lead there, but still challenged by that Greenwich crew and Moorestown Rowing Club in lane 2, and very, very closely by Sarasota. Again, no stranger to this course.
Yeah, see, so we're seeing sort of a lineup based on the seating. We have the Great Space Coaster on the, that's an older one for some of you out there. But we have Space Coast still in the lead, looking very good. You know, just moving the boat along. We do have a little bit of a move, it looks like, by Greenwich there. They are trying to maybe pull a little bit back, having dealt with those steering issues. They're now in their rhythm, settled down. So it looks like Space Coast is out. Greenwich is right beside them. And, you know, once we get another look, we'll be able to see who's battling in that third and fourth place.
Exactly. Coming through the 1,000 here, we are at 3 minutes and 39 seconds, or just past that now in real time. But, you know, I would love to actually ask you about that. We see the Greenwich crew a little bit of steering, and now they're coming back with a vengeance, and they are actually making quite a move on Space Coast in lane 0. So what do you think? If you have a little mishap, you have something happen out there that maybe it wasn't expected or wasn't part of the race plan, how motivated are you to actually take a move and get yourself back in the race with maybe a little bit more gusto and a little bit more push than you originally anticipated? How are you going to get back in the game?
We had a saying, be the goldfish. Okay, so I don't know what it is, but goldfish have a very short memory. I don't know if it's 10 seconds or what, but when you're in a race and something happens bad, be the goldfish. Get back to your race plan. You know, that's where coxswains come in. Especially in these aces, they can say, all right, boom, we've passed that. Let's get our heads back in the boat. Let's focus. But in those situations, if you start going down the route of negativity, then you're not going to be able to pull yourself out of it. You have to be able to react to situations, and that's what these kids have practiced for all year long. And I think there's no doubt we're seeing it here in that Greenwich crew as they start to take back some of that lead. They had those early problems, and now they're pulling back and they're executing their race plan.
I mean, this is who is at the catch and who is at the finish now between Space Coast crew in lane 0 and Greenwich in lane 1. And then still connected by a canvas here is Sarasota crew in lane 3, stroked by Jenna Khalil. And then lane 2, falling just a few seats back, maybe 3 or 4 seats back, is Moorestown Rowing Club, led by Sadie Greenleaf. That is lane 2 here. But do keep an eye on this bow-ball to bow-ball race between Space Coast crew and Greenwich crew, again, who got 4th in this event last year. So they, again, are going to be out for something to defend. But, again, we have to see if these crews are going to race for lanes or if they are just going to make it through.
Yeah, and like this is what I love to see, like you were talking about, catch, finish, surge, you know, which boat is on the surge. And that can be really tough coming into that last 500 because, you know, at that line, at the finish line, it's who's surging, you know, and that tells you something. But, you know, let's not forget what's going on right here in this race for 3rd and 4th place here. We have Sarasota crew and Moorestown really pushing hard to see who's going to get that spot.
Yeah, that's right. And again, we will see Morristown to see if they actually make a push again for the lane, or are they okay with accepting that 4th place position. So I think we will see that maybe a little bit more as we come into the sprint zone. Again, the danger zone here in the red buoys, very exciting to see who's going to throw down. But again, we know that not all crews are going to throw down all of their cards. So we are hoping and assuming that they're saving a little something for that final, which is very exciting to see. If this race is any indication of what we're going to see in a final, then I cannot wait.
Now, it looks like Space Coast is maybe putting in a little push here to respond. They've settled down. They feel as though maybe they want to take that 1st place spot in this semifinal. So we'll see how this goes here.
Now, what do you think? This is a race for pride now. It's, again, who's at the catch, who's at the finish, because these crews are looking over at each other. Look at these coxswains.
Yeah,
looking over at each other, just saying, all right, I can't give it up by a foot.
You can't beat this visual right here. The coxswains looking over, yelling at each other as they come down to the finish line. Who's going to surge through? Ooh, that was so close. But I'm going to have to say, I think that was Space Coast.
I think Space Coast, yep, by a beep.
And there we go. It looks like Sarasota was able to hold on, and Morristown really just not able to push back. And look at that difference, less than half a second distance between Space Coast and Greenwich. That's unofficial, but it looks like we have crossing the line now.
I know it's a bit hard to tell in the glare here.
Yeah, it looks like that was lane 6, NorCal, and now we have lane that was lane 5, Mount St. Joseph, followed by White Rock, and then we have NorCal finishing up in the 7th position of that race.